Welcome back. Today, we're diving into what is no joke, one of the most dramatic turnarounds you'll ever read about. We're talking about the incredible climax of the Book of Esther. This is where a terrifying plot for genocide gets completely flipped on its head in just a few chapters. It's a stunning reversal of fortune, and we're going to walk through it all. So get this. What if the fate of an entire nation, everything, hinged on a single sleepless night? It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But believe it or not, that is the exact turning point of this story. Just one powerful king tossing and turning, and it kicks off this chain reaction that, well, feels way too perfect to just be a coincidence. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First up, that sleepless night's reversal. Then the villain is unmasked. After that, we'll see how they deal with reversing an irreversible decree. Then it's all about victory and remembrance. And finally, we'll wrap up with a legacy of peace. Let's get into it. All right, first up, a sleepless night's reversal. This is all about chapter 6, which is really the turning point. This is where everything starts to flip, and it all kicks off with something so normal. The king can't sleep. And that one little thing becomes the catalyst for this huge, monumental reversal. Okay, you have to appreciate the timing here. It's just perfect. So first, King Ahasuerus can't sleep. Totally normal, right? So he says, hey, bring me the record books to read. And the guy reading to him just so happens to land on the part where Mordecai saved the king's life from an assassination plot. The king's like, wait a minute, did we ever do anything for that guy? And of course, the answer is no. And then at that exact moment, who should stroll in? Haman. And what's he there for? To get permission to hang the very same Mordecai. Come on, you can't make this stuff up. And this is where the irony just gets so good. The king sees Haman and asks him, hey, Haman, what should I do for the man I really want to honor? And Haman, whose ego is just off the charts, immediately thinks, oh, he's talking about me. So he lays out this incredibly lavish, over-the-top ceremony, a parade, royal robes, the king's own horse, the whole 9 yards. He's basically planning his own party. You can just imagine Haman's face when the king says, great idea, now go do all of that for Mordecai the Jew. Ouch, it is a crushing blow. Haman himself has to lead his sworn enemy through the streets on the king's horse, shouting this proclamation for everyone to hear. The very plan he designed to destroy Mordecai ends up being the instrument of his own profound public humiliation. So what can we take away from this incredible chapter? Well, first, it's a huge lesson in how God's providence often works in quiet, everyday moments. It's not always a parting of the seas. Sometimes it's just a case of insomnia. It also shows us, plain as day, that pride really does lead to humiliation and a downfall. And finally, it's a reminder that faithfulness, that quiet integrity like Mordecai's, it does get recognized in the end. All right, section 2, the villain is unmasked. This is chapter 7, the big confrontation. So picture this. Haman is just getting home, totally humiliated from that parade, and he's immediately rushed off to Queen Esther's second banquet. You can just feel the tension in the air. This is it. This is the moment. So they're at the banquet, and the king again asks Esther, what is it you want? Anything, up to half my kingdom. And this time, she's ready. She reveals that she herself is a Jew, and she pleads for her life and the life of her people, saying they've been sold to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. The king is furious. Who would dare do such a thing, he demands. And that's when Esther points right at Haman and says, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. And from that moment, Haman's fall is just breathtakingly fast. Esther makes the accusation, the king flies into a rage and storms out into the garden. Haman, completely terrified, starts begging Esther for his life, and he actually falls onto the couch where she's reclining. Well, at that exact moment, the king walks back in. He sees this and completely misinterprets the scene, thinking Haman is assaulting the queen. And that's it. That's the final nail in the coffin. The king gives the order, and Haman's fate is sealed right then and there. And here's the poetic justice part. One of the king's attendants speaks up and says, hey, Haman built this massive gallows at his house for Mordecai. How tall? 50 cubits. That's like 75 feet high. He was really planning to make a statement. And the king just says, hang him on it. Just like that. The very instrument Haman built out of his wicked pride becomes the tool of his own execution. The spiritual lessons in this chapter are just so powerful, aren't they? It shows that the courage to speak the truth, even when it's terrifying, can literally change the course of history. We also see that justice can come swiftly and unexpectedly. But maybe the biggest one is this: evil intentions have a way of ensnaring the person who came up with them. It's a perfect example of that. Okay, moving on to section 3. So Haman is gone, which is great, but that doesn't actually solve the biggest problem. His evil decree to destroy all the Jewish people, it's still on the books. It's still a law. So now we get to chapter 8 and the huge challenge of reversing an irreversible decree. So even though Haman's been dealt with, Esther is still pleading with the king in tears because her people are still facing a death sentence. The wheels of the Persian government are already turning, and you can't just hit the brakes. And here's why it was so tricky. They were up against something called the Law of the Medes and Persians. Basically, any royal order that was sealed with the king's special ring could not be changed or repealed, ever, not even by the king who made it. So from a legal standpoint, that horrible decree was permanent. So what do you do when you're faced with an impossible, irreversible problem? You get creative. This is just brilliant. The king gives his ring to Mordecai, who's now in a position of power. And since Mordecai can't undo the old decree, he writes a brand new one. Haman's decree said to destroy all the Jews. Mordecai's new decree gave the Jews the right to gather together and defend their lives. It's a masterful countermove that doesn't break the law, but it completely neutralizes the threat. This chapter is such a fantastic lesson in wisdom, right? It shows that with some clever thinking, you can find solutions to problems that seem totally impossible. And it's also a powerful example of what to do with power. As soon as Mordecai gets it, what does he do? He uses it to protect the vulnerable. And the result is this incredible turnaround for the people, a total shift from mourning and fear to joy and light. Okay, on to our 4th section, victory and remembrance. This brings us to chapter 9. This is the day. The day that Haman had chosen for destruction is finally here. You've got 2 opposing royal decrees in effect, and everything is about to come to a head. And when that day came, the tables had completely turned. With the king's new decree backing them, the Jewish people were able to defend themselves, and they were victorious. They defeated those who sought to destroy them. But look at this one detail, because the Bible mentions it 3 separate times, which means it's important. They took no plunder. They didn't take any spoils. This makes it crystal clear that this was a fight for their lives, for survival, not a war for greed or gain. Now, to make sure this incredible deliverance would never, ever be forgotten, Mordecai and Esther create a brand new holiday, the Festival of Purim. And the name itself is so significant. It comes from the word pur, which means lot. It's named for the very lots that Haman cast to pick the date for their destruction. It's amazing. They took a symbol of their impending doom and turned it into the name for their celebration of deliverance. And they set up these traditions for Purim that are all about community and gratitude. It was to be a time for feasting and joy, of course, but also for sending food to one another and, really importantly, for giving gifts to the poor. The idea was to make sure that everyone in the community, no matter their circumstances, could celebrate together. It's all meant to be remembered and kept, generation after generation. So the lessons from this chapter are all about community. That in unity, there is absolutely strength to overcome huge challenges. That it is so important to remember and celebrate God's deliverance. And that real joy, true joy, is meant to be shared. It grows when you are generous with your community. And that brings us to our final section, a very short but really important one, a legacy of peace. Chapter 10 is basically the epilogue. It wraps everything up and cements this new, hopeful reality for the Jewish people. The book closes with Mordecai in this incredible position of power. He's second in command of the whole empire. But the final verse tells you everything you need to know about his character. It says he was great among the Jews, seeking the wealth of his people and speaking peace to all his seed. His legacy wasn't about his power or his title. It was about how he used that power to serve his people, to seek their well-being, and to ensure their peace. So from a single sleepless night all the way to a lasting legacy of peace, the Book of Esther is just this absolutely stunning story of reversal and deliverance. And it leaves us with this powerful question to think about. When evil seems to have the upper hand in our own world, where do we find the courage to act for the good of others?